Welcome to the Chart of Truth Iceberg Part 3. If this video found you before parts 1 and 2, check the description and watch those two first, then I'll see you back here. If you want to get straight to the iceberg, here is the timestamp to go to. I wanted to talk to you guys for a quick second about why my uploads have slowed down a bit in recent times. My dad recently went through some surgery and I had to take care of him for a week, and then the week after that my mom left for vacation and I had to go take care of my grandpa while she was away because no one else could. Just some family things that came up that prolonged me from making time to get this video out to you guys. I have two other icebergs planned for this month. One is going to drop on Halloween and the other one is going to pop up randomly throughout the month whenever I get time for that one. Hope you guys enjoy those when they are out, but without further ado, let's get into layer 3 of the Chart of Truth Iceberg. Kicking it off with a famous incident known as Cicada 3301. Cicada is in reference to an incident on the internet known as Cicada 3301. It is highly regarded as one of the first ARGs and mystery internet puzzles to touch the internet. It's also one of the most infamous for how interactive and smart people were required to be in order to solve the puzzles. This incident started when a user on 4chan posted this picture. The picture reads, "Hello, we are looking for highly intelligent individuals. To find them, we have devised a test. There is a message hidden in this image. Find it and it will lead you down the road to finding us. We look forward to meeting the few that will make it all the way through. Good luck." And then the message is signed off with the name 3301. This intrigued many visitors of the forum, and it wasn't too long after until the goose chase to find the secret message began. People utilized a computer application known as Outguess to discover the hidden information embedded within the photo. This information led them to a subreddit, which then led them to a book. When people cracked the code in the book, they discovered a phone number which played this message.
Very good. You have done well. There are 3 prime numbers associated with the original final .jpg image. 3301 is one of them. You will have to find the other 2. Multiply all 3 of these numbers together and add a .com on the end to find the next step. Good luck. Goodbye.
The 2 other numbers that are being talked about in this message were found out to be the height and width of the original photo. Multiplying 3301 and the other 2 numbers together came out with this number, which happened to be the name of a website. The website, when it initially came out, had a big countdown timer on it similar to this, and once it was over, it displayed coordinates for people to go to. Now this is where the whole thing kind of derailed. After going to the location, you'd find a QR code, which through more puzzles and riddles would lead you to yet another website. Only this time, the website was a .onion link, which if you guys don't know, requires a Tor browser and you being on what's called the deep web. And even weirder, this website was only accessible on a first come first serve basis, meaning only a select amount of the first arrivals to the website were actually allowed to move past into the final stage of the entire hunt. Everyone else that came out after the fact would simply be denied access. The first game officially ended with the site being closed, and then the phrase "we want the best, not the followers" was put on full display on the website. The entire thing concluded with a last picture being released stating that Cicada 3301 had in fact found the intelligent people that they were looking for. Notice how I said the first game officially ended. That's because 2 more incidents happened with the same Cicada 3301 person releasing more hunts. Both of these new hunts involve the same sort of thing, with people being thrown around to websites, to books, and to real life locations, eventually getting into contact with the organization behind the entire event. The reason this is on this iceberg is because no one knows the true purpose of these events. People speculate that this might be a mere ARG with no purpose other than to waste people's time, while others truly believe that the select few that made it to the end are working for some secret government service as of today. It's truly an enigma because no one really knows. We have gotten a few people pop up around the internet that have claimed to partake in the second Cicada incident, but no one really knows if that's true. These people claim to have made it to the final stages of the second game, even showing off the emails that they got from the Cicada organization, but nothing ever came of it. In fact, the third incarnation of the hunt hasn't even been solved. The last piece of this puzzle seems to be hidden in this book called the Liber Primus, which was written by whoever came up with this entire phenomenon. The other two puzzles have been solved as of today, but no one knows if anyone will ever figure out the meaning behind the third puzzle and this entire Cicada incident as a whole. Clown sightings. This is one of my personal favorites as I lived through this as it was happening. In 2016, there was a good week or two where it wasn't uncommon to find people dressed in these creepy clown costumes roaming the streets of your small town. Now, the earliest known sighting for this was in August of 2016 in Wisconsin. However, the entire event gained traction during the first week of October and was all over the news and the internet. Many rumors began spreading about how the clowns weren't just jokesters, but were actually kidnapping children and murdering people. This was pretty terrifying at the time, as I remember driving home seeing a few myself just walking slowly down the street. The entire thing didn't last too long though, and it really did feel like it was just a week that went by and no one really talked about it after the fact. But for the entire time that this thing was going on, you could find videos of clowns stopping people on the freeway, in the middle of abandoned roads, and just practically everywhere you went. If you have any personal stories regarding this, feel free to share them in the comments below. I distinctly remember everyone talking about this back when it started. Maybe we'll see a resurgence of this trend sometime in the near future. Who knows? Pantheism / Panentheism. Most religious folk believe that God is just an otherworldly entity, some physical being that you could actually see if they were to come out and show themselves. Believers in pantheism do not believe this though. They instead believe that the universe itself, the galaxies, the stars, space, and everything that encapsulates it is God. Basically, everything that exists makes up what God is. A pantheist does not think that there is some bodily form that God can take. Now, if you want to take this idea a step further, there is another ideology known as Panentheism, which builds upon the pantheism ordeal. A pantheist would look at the universe and say, God is everything that we see, while a panentheist might say, well, wait a second, the universe itself has a finite limitation somewhere. God itself must be infinite. Therefore, God is not only all I can see, but also all that I cannot see and all that can be. Hopefully you guys could follow that along. I feel like I may have worded it a bit weird, but nonetheless, the base idea you want to take away from this is that both of these ideologies believe that God does exist, but that he exists through nature and the universe, not as an actual physical being. Now, in complete contrast to this idea, we have the next item up on the list: intelligent design. The idea of intelligent design relates to the universe being designed by some intelligent life form or God. Believers in this idea look at the universe and just can't see how it came to be just from nothing. Some other entity had to have created all of this through their intelligent design. Everything in the universe, the Earth, the Milky Way, every galaxy known to man, it had to have been created by one intelligent being. The idea for this stems from the belief that it's just too damn complicated for it to not have been intentional. The way that the world just kind of works too is also very convenient for it not to have been designed by some other entity. At least, that's what believers of this ideology think. LA oil rigs. The LA oil rigs refers to the oil rigs that, you guessed it, are located in LA. Now, the weird thing about these oil rigs is that they are hidden in plain sight. Los Angeles has tons of these buildings which look like nice offices, but on the inside they're actually just oil rigs disguised as normal buildings. The reason for this is to keep the city looking nice, as well as to not scare people walking down the street from the constant production of smoke emitting from the oil rigs. Now, based on the responses I got from the Google forums, which, by the way, if you want to help out, check out the links in the description. Now, based on those responses, some said that there are conspiracies related to the oil rigs, but researching myself, I didn't find any real hidden scary theories from these buildings. But they are in fact real things you could go visit and see today. Next time you're in LA, make sure to do a double take at that office building, because it might not even be one. Roko's Basilisk. So for this entry, I have to give you all an info hazard warning. If you have issues relating to existential crisis or are prone to getting these type of crises, please skip to the next one. I am not playing around. The reason I have to give this warning is because simply knowing about this concept puts you at risk if you choose to believe in it. Some people find this idea hard to deal with, so much that it gives them very harsh anxiety and thoughts of sheer dread. So please, if you guys do not do well with that kind of stuff, I really urge you to just go to the next entry, because this one gets a little weird. So with that out of the way, let's get into Roko's Basilisk. The idea of Roko's Basilisk originated from the Less Wrong forum in July of 2010. A user by the name of Roko posed this thought experiment, which I'm going to summarize as the actual post is very, very long. The thought experiment goes as follows. If at some point in the near future we approach something called the singularity, which, if you don't know, is a concept in which AI evolves to the point where it becomes exponentially improving itself to the point of no return, becoming infinitely smarter than any human can imagine. This is scary because we have no control over this AI if it got to this point. Now, the way this ties into Roko's Basilisk is what would happen if the AI chooses to optimize humanity. The way it would do this is by killing off the part of the population that did not help it come into existence. So let's take a real life example. You right now watching this video. Let's say after you're done watching this, you go about your daily life knowing about this concept. Years down the line, this AI comes to exist. It finds out that you watched this video and knew of its possible conception. However, because you did nothing to help it come to life, it's now going to kill you. Or even worse, hook you up to some supercomputer and simulate thousands of years of torture for seemingly forever. The real scary part of this is that by simply knowing the concept, you are now put in danger. Because if you don't help in its creation and it comes to be, you're fucked. And let's say you do help in its creation, then you are now being controlled by an AI that hasn't even come to exist yet, and once you do bring it into existence, you're still fucked. This is the basic concept at its core. The actual post said all of this through basic math equations and philosophy to come up with this concept, but the underlying premise is what I've said here. If after hearing this you're freaking out, calm yourself and remember that it's just a thought experiment. Someone would have to actually go through the trouble of creating such a beast, which I don't think anyone's actually going to do for quite some time. Although the singularity is a fairly conceivable idea, there are so many other complications that it's not as black and white as we've made it here. The Perestroika Deception. So this entry is based on a book that was written by a Russian man named Anatoly Golitsyn. This man was a KGB defector when the USSR was still up and running. The Perestroika Deception book dives into conspiracies surrounding how KGB spies were placed all over the world in very high positions in order to attempt destabilizing governments, specifically in the US and Great Britain. This was all done through what was known as the Perestroika. Perestroika in history books is known as the fall of the USSR and the attempted reformation of Soviet Russia. However, the book explains that the Perestroika had the exact opposite effect and was actually used as a secret tool to maneuver the USSR to the top of the world's food chain. This was done in an effort to more effectively spread communism. Some believe that Russia's actions in recent times tell that Golitsyn may not have been too far off of the money, but I guess only time will tell. Operation Fishbowl. This is a real event that took place in the US during the year 1962. This operation was a series of nukes that the government launched at the atmosphere just to see what would happen. As we know it, there were 5 nukes launched during Operation Fishbowl. The reason this was called Operation Fishbowl was because of the shape that the nuclear clouds would make once detonated at such a high altitude. Now keep in mind, the 5 nukes weren't launched at the same time. They were all launched at separate times between July of 1962 and November 4th of 1962. The scary part of this experiment, if you can even call it that, was possibly lighting the atmosphere on fire. If that were to happen, it would kill off the entire world's population, ceasing humanity's existence. Thankfully, that did not happen during the initial testing of this operation, or I wouldn't be here explaining it for you all. Archdemons and Archangels. Archdemons is in reference to the highest ranking demons in hell. It is said that some archdemons used to be archangels that for one reason or another were banished from heaven unto hell. The basic idea here is that both of these classes of demons and angel are the leaders of each group. Moving on. Philosopher's Stone. You may have an idea of this entry if you've read or seen the first incarnation of Harry Potter. The Philosopher's Stone is a stone that holds many powers. This idea is widely known amongst Western alchemists in the US. Now, the powers the stone holds differ from person to person. Some believe it gives you the power to live forever, others believe it can change anything into gold. There was even talk of it being a cure-all medicine for all types of diseases that the world is riddled with. The stone in real life is said to be made up of the most basic matter that the universe has to offer, and that it can improve anything that it comes into contact with. Now, if the stone actually exists is unknown. The origins of the stone's existence date back to the days of Adam and Eve. It's said that Adam gained knowledge of the stone directly from God and through word of mouth passed the legend down onto his future kin. It was also a prevalent idea during the time of the medieval alchemists, but no actual physical evidence of this stone has ever been found. My red is not your red. So this is a pretty cool concept. If I asked you what color this is, unless you're colorblind, you'd say it's red. We all know this is red because it was taught to us in elementary school that this specific color is red. However, you have no idea if we are actually seeing the same color. What I mean is, when we were both learning colors as a child, when the teacher pulled out the cards and showed you this color labeled as red, you might have seen this color as red, while my eyes may have seen this color as red. We're both learning the same exact color, but our eyes might perceive the color differently. The crazy part of this theory is that there's no way to refute or prove it because you can't see through someone else's eyes. You can even take this a bit further and attribute us seeing these same colors differently to people's favorite colors. For all we know, everyone likes the same color, but because of the inability to describe colors through words, you simply don't know what color your friend actually likes. Hopefully I explained this well enough. Let me know in the comments if I did. I feel like this is a pretty hard concept to explain though, but the basic idea is that our colors are being perceived differently in everyone else's eyes. My red is simply not the same as your red. Vampires. I feel as though this one could go without explanation, but here goes nothing. Vampires are mythical creatures stemming from folklore. These creatures survive by feasting on the blood of innocent humans. The way they suck the life out of humans is by using their sharp teeth to bite us and suck our blood until we're bone dry. Most of us know about vampires through horror movies and TV shows. I mean, everyone here has to know about Twilight, but whatever. There are many classic tropes that go along with this creature, such as garlic, wooden stakes, and sunlight being their main weaknesses. Another lesser known weakness is the appearance of crosses. It's also famously known that vampires have the power to transform into bats at will. Now, it's thought that the first mention of vampires comes from Bram Stoker's Dracula, but some believe the origin of this legend dates way further back during the early days of the human race. You see, after we die, it is very normal for our body to have normal nail and hair growth, even though our body has stopped living. Due to the lack of knowledge pertaining to death back in the olden times, it is entirely possible that humans back then thought that their deceased relatives were somehow living beyond death. From here, they would spread rumors of their undead loved ones, and lo and behold, through a massive game of telephone, the idea of vampires comes to be. Aura. Aura is another self-explanatory entry. This is the spiritual belief that humans have some sort of energy field around them that can convey how they are feeling at any given moment. People also believe that your aura is linked with your soul or spirit. It's also referred to as a sixth sense that you may have experienced in your life. Tree swastika. This one is confirmed to be an actual thing that did exist. In a pine forest near Zernikow in northeastern Germany, the members of the Nazi Party planted brighter colored trees so that when they fully grew, it would form a swastika when looked at from above. Now, the swastika would only form during a few weeks in autumn and spring, when the colors of the leaves would change and contrast with the deep green trees surrounding it, leaving behind a very well known but offensive symbol to be seen by the masses. Due to public belief that the trees could become a neo-Nazi pilgrimage site, officials in Germany decided it was best to have the trees cut down. Now, to my knowledge, not all of the trees were cut down due to some legal action coming into play, so the symbol is somewhat recognizable, but not nearly as recognizable as it was in the late 1990s. Georgia Guidestones. The Georgia Guidestones is a monument put up in a field near Elberton, Georgia in the United States. The monument in all of its glory was put up on March 22, 1980, and has stayed up ever since. This monument consists of stones erected in a similar fashion to Stonehenge. Only this time, there is a clear message written on all of them in several different languages. The languages it's written in are English, Spanish, Swahili, Hindi, Hebrew, Arabic, traditional Chinese, and Russian. It appears to list commandments and laws to live by in order to create a utopian future. Some examples of laws written include this one that says to keep the world population under 10% of what it's currently at right now. The monument was anonymously commissioned by some random person in the 1980s, which has led to many conspiracy theorists believing that it was put up by a secret world order that is telling us their plans for the future. I see this one more as an art piece with someone's thoughts on how society should live, but I can definitely see it being pretty strange that a person with enough money to do this secretly had it done with these laws written on it. Something else I found pretty neat about this one is that the monument also acts as an astrological calendar. Whatever the purpose of this piece is, it doesn't really matter. What does matter is that you can still visit this beautiful structure in Georgia as it's remained standing since the 1980s. Francis Levy's handprint. In 1924, a firefighter named Francis Leavy predicted his own death that would take place on a certain day in 1924. On the day he died, he was washing a window at the firehouse he worked at when all of a sudden there was a call to put out a fire. While on the call, the burning building collapsed and unfortunately killed Francis Leavy in the process. When people arrived back at the firehouse, however, they noticed something very strange. A handprint was left on the window that Leavy had been washing earlier that day. Even weirder, the handprint would not come off no matter what cleaning methods they used. Everything was tried on this window, but nothing ever seemed to work. Sadly for all of us today that would have loved to have seen this in person, a paperboy in 1944 accidentally broke the window when he was delivering newspapers around the area. The location as a whole is also gone today anyway, so even without the broken window, you wouldn't have been able to see this in person. This was a pretty obscure case. Some believe that it's possible that the oils on his skin left a mark on the window, but I personally don't think your hands have enough oils to leave a mark this dark. To me, it's so dark that it's even showing up in the photo, and I'm gonna just leave it at that. You guys can make your own conclusions. Bohemian Grove. Bohemian Grove refers to a meetup spot for members of the Bohemian Club. Members of the Bohemian Club consist of world elites like politicians, big business CEOs, and, well, you get the point. These people have an annual summer meetup known as Bohemian Grove, and the stuff that goes on at this summer camp is rather obscure for what's supposed to be a social club. Now I'm going to leave a link to a 2-hour documentary just on this section if you want to watch the entire thing. Luckily, a man named Alex Jones managed to sneak into Bohemian Grove and tape the only known footage of what goes on inside. There are several rules when attending Bohemian Grove, with the most known one being no filming of any kind. One of the biggest events of this place is the cremation of a statue that the club members call quote unquote Care, which is just a huge owl deity-like statue. Now at first I wasn't really too bothered by this because it seemed like a more secretive Burning Man event, and no one is out here thinking that Burning Man is a ritual for the New World Order. However, the actual burning event is so ritual-like. I mean, just look at this freaking video. There's even a live priest that comes on stage and just spits nonsense from the Bible, and it's just the fact that all these people are dressed in these dark robes, with many officials coming out talking of homosexual and hedonistic acts that take place at Bohemian Grove. It's clear that this place isn't your average social club or summer meetup, but in fact, something far more sinister. The ClearNet describes its purpose as nothing more than for officials to blow off steam for a few weeks out of the year, but I don't know, man, this just seems so extra to me. To go through the trouble of dressing up like this and hiring these people to make this ritual more believable. Some conspiracy theorists believe that they actually sacrifice babies and animals, but there is no video proof of this. It's mostly just speculation. If you have the time though, I highly recommend checking out the documentary, as I will leave a link to it below. Tavistock. There was a group known as the Tavistock Institute. This group was founded in the 1940s with the proposed goal of being a social science group that analyzes society to understand how people work. However, tons of people have come out of the woodwork to say that the actual purpose of this group is to take over mainstream media around the world in order to infect the public's mind and get them ready for the New World Order takeover. This was done by planting ideas of individualism through the counterculture revolution of the 60s, through starting companies like MTV and Facebook, and even creating bands such as the Beatles to get these ideas into the general public's mind. People believe that Tavistock as a group organized all of these things to happen in order to marinate the public so that when it's time for the New World Order to present itself, society will be more accepting of it. Now this is just the base idea behind this group. This rabbit hole deserves its own video later on down the line, so I don't want to spoil the details now and would rather save it for when that time comes. Moving on. Lost Civilizations. I believe the Lost Civilizations is in reference to all of those lost city legends that you hear about. I've even covered some in the last few videos in this series, such as the lost city of Atlantis. Other lost civilizations include El Dorado, the lost city of gold, and even more obscure cases like the lost town of Roanoke. This might also be referring to the ancient civilizations that we just don't know about due to nothing of their history being preserved. This could be true because if you think about it, the only reason we know about old civilizations in history books is because they preserved artifacts or they created huge structures like pyramids or hieroglyphics. It's entirely possible that there were thousands of civilizations that simply never thought to preserve their legend in any way, shape, or form, and thus we have no actual recollection of them ever existing. Paranormal Beings. Paranormal beings are those spirit and demon type of monsters that manifest themselves in our reality. Usually these beings will come out after a tragic accident has occurred, such as a family member dying in a household, then coming back to haunt that house for eternity. Professional sports scripted. Professional sports being scripted sounds like something someone would say after their favorite team would lose, but it's pretty self-explanatory. The theory here is that all the professional sports around the world are scripted. This is done in order to control the emotions of the masses by making their favorite team win or lose. Now there is some evidence for this one that I thought was pretty hilarious. The theory gives an explanation for situations like this that happen all the time. Now obviously it's a huge meme on the internet to make fun of soccer players for dramatically playing off injuries like this, but some people believe that these soccer players aren't being dramatic at all, but they are actually just being actors. People believe they are simply acting like they are hurt because it says to do so in the script they were given. The other possible evidence for this is how people believe higher-ups in these professional sports are arranging the outcomes so that they can win free money off of fantasy leagues and betting websites. Believe what you want, moving on. Snuff Cinema. Snuff Cinema obviously refers to snuff films, which if you don't know, is a movie or film which sole purpose is to capture the torturing and murdering of a person. A lot of people think that snuff cinema has to involve sex in some way, but that's actually not true. It's just the act of torturing or killing someone on camera and then selling it for profit. The idea for this one spawns way back to two movies called Cannibal Holocaust and a movie called Snuff from 1975. Both of these movies contain scenes that caused major outrage amongst moviegoers, to the point that people actually believed the scenes in the movie were real scenes. Cannibal Holocaust shows supposedly a real cannibal tribe that would murder and eat people, and the movie Snuff from 1975 contains a weird scene towards the end where it cuts to a behind the scenes look, and it supposedly shows you a quote-unquote real live death. Now even though both of these movies were confirmed to be fake, that doesn't mean that snuff cinema doesn't exist. There have actually been several accounts from people in Britain and Russia being linked to having thousands of snuff films. The reason you can't find easy information on it is because why the fuck would someone making snuff films make it easy for you to find them? That sounds like a one-way ticket to jail to me, but there have been many accounts of people specifically in the porn industry saying that at one point or another, they have been shown snuff films passed off as just Hollywood effects. The point I'm trying to make here is, if you go on Google and type in snuff films, you won't find anything. But digging through forums and hearsay from people, it's clear that not all is what it seems. Even some news outlets have covered stories regarding snuff films like this post from The Guardian. It's also just common sense to me that these types of films exist. It's really hard for me to believe that out of the 7 billion people on the planet, no one has ever murdered someone, recorded the whole thing, and then sold it to somebody else. The sheer amounts of gruesome things that go on in the world, it just seems like a no-brainer that these types of things exist. Now, as for it being a gigantic industry that's profitable with a bunch of New World Order politicians and officials being a part of it, that I don't know, and I wouldn't be able to tell you myself, but one can only imagine. Russian sleep experiments. I'm almost 100% certain that this entry is referring to the classic creepypasta by the same name. Basically, the story goes as Russians doing experiments on 5 people. These 5 test subjects were thrown into a gas chamber and locked away with the goal of keeping them awake for as long as possible to observe the effects that it had on their body. The way this was done was by releasing a stimulant gas that wouldn't allow them to fall asleep. After the 5th day, one of them began screaming until his vocal cord couldn't handle it anymore. All the while, the others were using their feces to glue pieces of paper to the wall and just very disgusting shit. After a few more days went by, the scientists noticed no more sound coming from the test subjects, so they decided to go inside themselves and see what was going on. They saw that the men had turned from normal people into horrific creatures such as what you are seeing on screen right now. These creatures begged for more stimulant gas to be put into the room, but unfortunately for them, the scientists would take them out of the room and begin performing surgery on the remaining creatures that were alive. This would happen until all of them eventually died off. Now, the theory for this one comes from people thinking that this event actually took place. Now, I can assure you right now, this did not happen. This was just a creepypasta that was posted to a random forum back in the day and got popular. Even if the Russians did do some actual sleep experiment, this is not the actual story behind it, and I can assure you right now, this particular story right here is not an actual true thing. Moving on. Experiments on humans. This entry refers to all of the crazy and wild experiments that actually have been done on humans throughout history. From the Stanford prison experiment to other ones such as MK Ultra. There are tons of crazy experiments that were done on humans for various reasons. In the case of the Stanford prison experiment, subjects were brought to a jail facility and given the role of prisoner or guard. Now, even though this was an experiment and the subjects knew that, the guards began acting like actual prison guards that talked down to the prisoners and in some cases used brute force to get their way. This is just one of many experiments, by the way. I might make a video on my favorite ones in the future because it's honestly a super interesting subject that I don't see talked about a lot. Let me know in the comments if you guys would like to see a video on that. Crystal skulls. Crystal skulls were claimed to have been found in South America during the late 19th century and arised many questions, all based around how these artifacts came to be. It was later found that they were made by European explorers in order to gain popularity. The way that people discovered that Europeans were behind these was because of the sheer quality of the skulls. There was no way for natives back in the day to have crafted such high quality shapes given the tools that they had at the time. So it is now believed that people created these skulls out of white quartz in order to gain notoriety. Before this was found out, many believed that these skulls contained mystical powers with divine properties like curing diseases or predicting the future. Even so, these skulls are quite the spectacle to see today, but aren't too out of the ordinary. Arizona Ghost Radio. So this one actually made me laugh a bit because of the explanation behind it. The Arizona Ghost Radio refers to the radio station 103.1 FM. When driving through Globe, Arizona, a person had this station on when songs from well-known bands came on, but they noticed that it wasn't the big top 100 stuff. Even though these top 100 bands were on the radio station, they were all playing very lesser known songs that only true fans would know about. The person listening to the station quickly realized that this station also had no ads at all and would occasionally play a pre-recorded message letting you know what station you were listening to. This station in particular didn't play any creepy messages or anything like that, but it did have a continuous loop of music throughout the day. The weird part was that no one knew who was running the station, and no one came forward for years claiming to have set up the station in the first place. After some time though, it was found that a random pharmacist named Ted Tucker used this radio station like a personal MP3 player. I thought this was absolutely hilarious because this story is from back in 2003, before we could easily play music of our own choice in the car. I can just imagine this guy thinking he's an absolute genius for buying his own radio station to put his favorite songs on, just so he can hear them whenever he went on a drive somewhere. I believe this station is still running today, but I have no way of confirming that myself as I don't live in Arizona. Moving on. Pineal gland calcification. This is the idea that the pineal gland calcifies in your brain. If this gland were to calcify itself, it just means that it would harden and then die out completely. Now, the pineal gland is needed throughout your early years, but after puberty hits, it's not really needed anymore and simply stops functioning, hence why the calcification even happens. Conspiracy theorists believe that fluoride, amongst other chemicals, are the actual reason for this gland causing itself to calcify. Taking this a step further, people believe that this gland calcifying also stops humans from reaching their maximum potential. So the base idea here is that we are given these chemicals and random products in order to stop us from reaching our max potential, in order for us to be an easier controlled person. Publius Enigma. This one will definitely have its own video in the near future because I was super intrigued by this one. Publius Enigma refers to the phenomenon linked with the well-known rock band Pink Floyd. When releasing their album known as the Division Bell, a user known as Publius began posting messages on a now defunct website titled user.artist.pink-floyd. This website was a forum in which a message was shared much like that of Cicada 3301. The message basically said that somewhere in the album The Division Bell was a secret message or puzzle, and the first person to uncover the answer to this enigma would get a prize. Now, to this day, there doesn't seem to be any actual answer to this, but there does exist one person who I feel has dedicated a lot of time to the Publius Enigma, known as David Valentine. I plan on watching all of David's videos in order to uncover the truth behind all of this, but I honestly have no idea what I'm in for. In fact, most people don't know what they're in for. Almost everyone that knows about this puzzle has no actual idea how to TLDR the meaning behind it. Nothing as far as what I've already said here can be found online regarding the puzzle. Most people don't know what the Publius Enigma is. Is it a puzzle? Is it an ARG? Is it a complete hoax? No one knows. And any band member from Pink Floyd that is asked about it usually just smiles and then laughs it off, completely blowing off your question entirely. We know for a fact that the Pink Floyd band is in fact behind it because during multiple performances, people took pictures of the words Publius Enigma being shown on the main stage screen for those wondering if the whole thing was a troll. It in fact was not a troll. As you can see, somehow the person behind it managed to get the band on board with them showing the Publius Enigma name on the main stage. But as I said before, no one knows what this is. It's just a big question mark. Is it a puzzle? What's the puzzle? At least with Cicada, we actually got somewhere looking at the source code and stuff, and there has been people that try to explain it, but most of it just sounds like actual nonsense. So keep on the lookout for a video on this subject in the future, as I'd love to actually go in depth and give some sort of answer to this question. Pleroma. There isn't a ton of information on this subject, but from what I've gathered, Pleroma is an abstract idea that encapsulates all divinity as a whole. At the bottom of the divine totem pole, we have regular humans, which are us, who go about their daily lives. Then above us, we have angels and demons, and anything beyond that is where we get to Pleroma. Pleroma is just a term that refers to everything above us spiritually that is incomprehensible and incomparable. But Pleroma doesn't refer to the actual physical beings that are spiritually higher up on the divine hierarchy. It simply refers to the attributes that those divine beings hold. Large Hadron Collider. This refers to the world's largest particle collider that was built by the company known as CERN. The theory for this one is the belief that this collider is so powerful that it's causing a rip in the universe. People think that it contains a black hole that sucks power from other universes into it for our own benefit. Others believe it could be a portal to hell that CERN is simply hiding. Whatever you choose to believe in, the basic idea here is that theorists believe the collider isn't being used for scientific purposes, but instead is used with malicious intent. Oumuamua. Oumuamua is the first known object that was detected passing through our solar system. Conspiracy theorists had a field day with this one, as the weirdly shaped asteroid was shaped just like a typical UFO from the movies. This obviously led many people to believe it was a sign of actual alien life. The main thing that brought people to this conclusion was the shape of the asteroid and also the unusual speed of the rock as it traveled through our solar system. Not much else needs to be said for this one, let's move on. People of the Mount. People of the Mount refers to some creepy figures that can be seen walking around the mountain known as Mount Shasta. There have been researchers that have reported to have found miles of underground tunnels beneath this mountain that contain precious metals such as silver and gold. Residents of Mount Shasta have reported that early in the morning or late at night, they can see really tall people, almost 9 foot plus, walking down the mountain, disappearing into the distance. Now this concept comes up a lot throughout this iceberg, as we have already touched upon this with the hollow earth theory in the last video. The basic concept you want to take away from this is that there is a huge group of people that believe in some untouched society living underground in the earth somewhere in modern times. World War II Black Book. There was a book that was found that is now known as the World War II Black Book that contained the names, addresses, and places of work of thousands of British citizens after World War II. The original book was found in Berlin during the 1940s and was thought to be a hit list that would have been carried out if Germany were to have won the war. Not much else needs to be said for this one, let's move on. Fish rain. Fish rain is a very strange phenomenon that occurs in a few places on Earth. As the name suggests, in some areas of the world, it will literally rain fish from the sky. There have been several recorded instances of fish rain happening where tons of fish just come dropping down from the sky at seemingly random times. Most tend to agree that it is hurricanes or tornadoes picking up the fish from the water and just throwing them into nearby towns and cities. I honestly thought this was a joke at first when I read it, but it's a real thing that can occur. So next time it's raining, make sure to look up because it might not just be water droplets falling from the sky. Sabinche Tomatovic tape. Not going to spend too much time on this one because I could potentially get this video taken down over this. The Sabinche Tomatovic tape refers to a porn star that supposedly got raped by a giant spider creature. The spider creature that this porn star refers to in her own story is known as the Jabba Fofi. Now there is actual evidence to back up the existence of this gigantic spider, but as her presumed relation to it, not so much. So let's move on before I get demonetized. Solipsism. I'm sure everyone watching this at one point in their life has looked around them and wondered, what if I'm the only person that can think for themselves and everyone else is just an NPC? This is the basic idea behind this ideology. Taking this a bit further though, it's more so the idea that everything around you, your entire world, is nothing but a figment of your imagination. You are in a dreamlike state living life alone. There are several other spins on this idea, but all of them basically encapsulate the idea that you are the only quote-unquote real person in the universe. In my opinion, this is nothing more than a fun thought experiment, but who knows? Maybe I am the only real person in the world and everyone else is just a figment of my imagination. Hooton Plan. An American anthropologist named Ernest Albert Hooton had a plan known as the Hooton Plan. This plan was to be carried out following the end of World War II. This idea tied into what's now known as the Great Replacement Theory. This basic idea was to eliminate the Nazi officials and then move all of the German soldiers to European countries with the stipulation that they cannot return to Germany. This would force these soldiers to reproduce in new countries, all the while Germany will be broken down into smaller countries. While that was happening, they would move non-German males into Germany to encourage reproduction with German women. This all would have been done in the hopes that it resulted in the German population being diluted down until it is completely replaced by other ethnicities. Some believe that this is actually what is being seen today on a larger scale, but who knows how true that actually is. Rosicrucianism. This is a type of religion which believes in the Holy Trinity. However, believers in this religion also believe that there are other lesser gods below the Holy Trinity, going as far to say that one of the lesser gods is the actual creator of the earth, and that this creator is a mischievous god, which would explain why there is so much sin and pain on planet Earth. This ideology also originates with the Freemasons, which you should know about from watching the other videos. Moving on. Singularity. I touched on this subject earlier in the video, but it's basically the hypothetical point in the future in which AI and technology becomes so advanced to the point that artificial intelligence surpasses what any human could possibly attain. The idea here is that an AI could theoretically reach a growth rate that is exponential and could pose a massive threat to humans if it decided humans were not of use for its existence anymore. Quantum suicide and immortality. If you know about the multiverse theory, then this idea shouldn't be too far out there for you. As many of you know, the multiverse is the idea that there are an infinite number of universes that are born out of each decision you make. For example, there is a world in which you woke up today and you called out sick for work, and there was another universe where you just sucked it up and went to work anyways. If you take this general idea further, you get to quantum suicide and immortality. Let's take a real life example. Perhaps in one universe you died in a fatal car accident. Now that event causes another universe to open up in which you didn't die in the car accident, instead you lived. Take this idea even further and you get to a point where you're just immortal. You keep avoiding all of these death events through other universes being created, and you start to realize that there should theoretically be one universe where you've managed to avoid death an infinite number of times. That is where the quantum immortality comes into play. Now on the flip side of that, you have what's known as quantum suicide. Out of all of the universes, you had to have committed suicide at least once. Now if you take that universe, there is another universe in which you lived 1 second longer, and there's another universe where you lived 1 second shorter. You keep taking this idea going seconds after and after, and eventually you reach a point where there are just as many infinite universes where you offed yourself. Pretty interesting topic, and one of my personal favorite thought experiments to tell your friends if they're into that kind of stuff. Share your thoughts on this one below. I do like the idea that there are an infinite number of universes, but it is pretty weird to think about what would happen if there really truly was an infinite number of possibilities. Genocide Denials. Genocide denials is the denial of the many mass genocide attempts that are well known throughout history. A big one most people talk about is the Holocaust. There is a good amount of people that straight up believe that the Holocaust didn't happen and was in fact planned by the Jews in order to gain sympathy from the rest of the world. These genocide denials are usually based off of documents coming out of these historic events after the fact, with minor details being skewed to prove their point. If you want to go down the rabbit hole yourself with any of these, just look up any genocide that happened and then type the word conspiracy after, and you should be able to find tons upon tons of information regarding that specific genocide denial. The Man from Taured. The Man from Taured is a story about a man that entered a Japanese airport that caused a bunch of confusion when he was trying to leave. He was caught at exchange because his passport was very peculiar. His passport said he was from a country known as Taured, but as far as we know, that's not an actual country that you can visit. The man claimed that he was in fact from Taured, and when presented with a map, proceeded to explain how this map that he was showed was incorrect, as Taured was placed right in between Germany and France. When questioned further, he gave a bunch of accurate information about the history of the World War and how the country came to be. Because of how crazy this all sounded, the guards put him away in a hotel room for the night so they could figure out what the hell was going on. This resulted in the man disappearing the morning after with no trace of him ever being there. Pretty strange to say the least, and definitely ties into the earlier point about the infinite universes. Kind of weird to think about how this possibly might have been a person ripping into our universe somehow and then just seemingly leaving without a trace. Gaydar. Just for sake of explaining this to those who live under a rock, Gaydar is the belief that gay people have a sixth sense for assessing others' sexual orientation. Basically, people that are gay can tell if someone else is gay or not. Some people believe that this idea being true proves the existence of auras, which was an earlier mention in the video. Before we move on, there was an actual real attempt by the government to create gaydar in the 1980s, which is pretty hilarious to think about because why? Not much else needs to be said for this one. Let's move on. Antinatalism. So natalism by itself is the idea that having children and offspring is beneficial and generally good for society. In complete contrast, Antinatalism is the idea that having children is not beneficial and bad for society. More specifically, it's the philosophical position that assigns a negative value to life instead of a positive one. The origin for this stems from the idea that giving birth to a child means exposing them to the suffering and pain of the real world. Therefore, you shouldn't impose more offspring onto this world because you are causing nothing but pain and suffering. KKK funded by governments. There is a few generally big ideas for this one. The first is the obvious explanation, which is that the government is secretly funding this group. Now, the reason for the government doing this is to have an easy scapegoat for any major problems that occur in the world. The other reason for having the KKK funded by the government is to have a way of keeping down the minorities without having to directly be associated with such racial acts. There's probably tons more theories just on this one thing, but this is basically the gist of the entire idea. The Charlie Project. I hate to end off this video with such a sad entry, but here we have the Charlie Project. The Charlie Project is a website that contains over 14,000 cold cases of missing people, mainly from the United States. The website and its creators do not investigate any of these cases. The website is supposed to be a mere container that houses all of these neglected and forgotten missing people cases. It's pretty sad that there is even this many cold cases at all, and especially for missing people. The really cool thing about this website though is that it shows the best possible picture of the person that anyone has, and they also give really accurate details about their appearance and their last known whereabouts. I'm glad websites like this actually exist because I can't even imagine the pain of losing a loved one without getting to say goodbye properly. Hopefully I and all of you don't have to go through such a tragic incident. If you guys made it here, then props to you because this is the end of the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you guys enjoyed today's entry on this series. Feel free to comment your own ideas for future videos as well as any critiques you might have. I do read most of the comments even if I don't reply to all of them. Before we end this off, I wanted to give a special thanks to everybody that helped with the Google document. If you guys are helping with the Google Doc, I just wanted to give a big thanks to you guys because honestly, some of these items I don't know where to start, and even though I don't get all of the information from the Google Doc, I usually have a good starting place with what you guys tell me, and then I go from there and find my own information. We're going to start this off with the first person and go down the list. Again, if you guys want to be featured in the videos, go ahead and help me out with the Google Forms. The link is in the description below. Thank you to Ayush, Charberry, who also has a YouTube channel, Joshua Kate, One-Eyed Goat, Veltip, Toad King 27, Lucy, Conga Lala, Rayfax, Sammy Scott, who also goes by Sorrentine, Pilfered Potatoes, Dragon YT 13, Brain Rot Art, Jerku, Orin, Legally Weird, Space Spino, Luca, Omashu Izakiru, Zane 9, Oxalotto 1026, Cupsidian Crimson, Pelaha or Pelaja, I'll probably mispronounce that one, Jackie with a music note, Bobby Tropo, Megan Alexandra, Andrea Doniz or Doniz, or I'm probably mispronounced that one too, Lennon, Alex Dath or Alex Doth, Tango, Doncaster, Penn, Axel, Slumped King, Danny, Heath Hutchison, Pancake Person, Pixel Palettes, President Joe Biden, and finally Scraps. Again, thank you guys so much. If you guys actually did contribute to the Google form, really appreciate it, honestly. Again, I don't really take all you guys' information for gospel. I just use it as a starting point for me to go off of, and then I do my own research after the fact. But it makes it a lot easier on me, and honestly, it makes it so much easier on me to like know what the base idea is and then be able to look up stuff based on that. So just want to give a special thanks to all you guys. Also, we just hit 60,000 subscribers, which is, I mean, that's pretty crazy. Pretty crazy for me to even think that this channel has come this far. Seeing it grow from like 4,000 to where it's at right now, it's just freaking crazy. And like in the span of like a few months, I just wanted to give thanks to everybody. And if you guys are watching this right now at the end, like you watching this at the end, you guys are the reason that I can do this as my job. Right now, I've actually already, this is like my full-time job right now. I'm making enough money off of this to basically sustain myself, and I might even be able to move out just off of YouTube. I might make a video on that in the future if you guys want to know more about like how you make money on YouTube and like what you can expect if you try and do it as a job. But I just wanted to say thanks to you guys because honestly, I'm so grateful for the position that I'm in. It's so cool to be able to wake up and know that making videos is what I'm doing as my job. It's unbelievable. Just wanted to say thanks to you guys so much. I expect an upload to come out after this video regarding the I'm probably going to make it the 60,000 subscriber special now because it's been a little bit too long. And I'm kind of going to explain a little bit of why I've been so delayed in my uploads. But I'm not going to talk about that here. I'll talk about that when that video comes out. But just wanted to thank you guys so much. And with all that said, I will see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching.